Station, this is Houston. Are you ready for the event?
Houston, this is Space Station. We are ready for the event.
Talbot Innovation Middle School, this is Mission Control in Houston. Please, call station for a voice check.
Station, this is Ben Squire at Talbot Innovation Middle School. How do you hear me?
Ben, I'm so glad to finally talk to you from space. I've been looking forward to talking with you and your school for quite a while. Good morning. It's great to be with you from the International Space Station.
Thank you very much, Chris. We'll get right into the student questions.
Hello, Mr. Cassidy. My name is Marilisi. I'm interested in knowing what is it like living with gravity, and can you do a trick for us?
Oh, the feeling of zero gravity is just tremendous. And yes, it's very easy to do a flip, and I can do it with hopefully not crashing my head into the ceiling, but it feels just tremendous. Imagine if you were in your classroom right there, and instead of sitting in the chairs that you are, everybody was floating in the middle of the room and having a discussion. That's what it's like every time we have dinner together on board with our crewmates.
Hello, Mr. Cassidy. My name's Madison. Do you think that humans visiting Mars is realistic, and would you want to go there?
Madison, that's a really intriguing question. I definitely think humans going to Mars is realistic. And in fact, when one of you guys is an astronaut, I really believe it'll happen. Maybe not in the time while I'm an active astronaut, but what myself and the others that are working at NASA right now are paving the way so that all the support systems and things like this will be in place, that you can reliably trust those systems as you travel on to Mars. It's a long way, as you know, to get there, and given the current propulsion technology, it would take a significant amount of time. And I'd have to think long and hard about going because it's a long time away from family and friends and loved ones, but it's a great goal to have to get to Mars. So I'd really think about that. And if as we're developing new technologies, which are in serious a serious process of development right now, that could get us there in much shorter of a time with constant low thrust, constant propulsion that can get us to Mars much more quickly. So that's exciting for me to think about, to pave the way for folks like you to be walking on Mars in not too distant future.
Hello, Mr. Cassidy. My name is Kenneth, and I'm in the 6th grade. I was wondering, what kind of projects is Robonaut used for?
Our buddy Robonaut is an interesting crewmate. He doesn't take up much space when he's packed away in his side, and he's very quiet and minds his manners, so we love having him on board. Now, what he's used for right now is figuring out how to function, and the ground teams are running through their test programs to make sure that he's safe and we can trust him to do tasks and things like this. In the not too distant future, he can be programmed to do certain procedures and to tend perhaps to certain experiments. Right now, he's not quite ready for that, and like I said, he's more in the test program, making sure that everything is sorted out and squared away. But it's pretty neat to see him. And when you put on the virtual reality glasses, it's as if you are Robonaut looking through his vision, and your hands can move and his hands respond. So it's a really fun experiment for us to try and work with Robonaut. It's a lot of fun.
Hello, my name is Joseph, and I wanted to know, how do gases and liquids move differently in space with zero gravity?
Joseph, you have good insight. So liquids, as a matter of fact, I could show you what liquids do. The surface tension of the liquids, particularly water, is what I'm using right now, keeps it together quite well, and then they form nice little bubbles. And I don't know if you can see that in the camera very well, but those bubbles float around, and if it's not water, it can get on our walls, and on Saturday mornings we have to clean that up. But that's how the liquid behaves, really just sort of wobbles around. One interesting experiment I'm a part of is designing certain vessels to hold those liquids such that the shape of the vessel forces the fluid to go in a certain way. And the use for that would be having fuel tanks without pumps to move that fluid around. So the natural surface tension forces will get the fluid to go where you want. That's really interesting. Now gases, on the other hand, they don't really spread that well. So what we need is a lot of fans. Our air conditioning system up here is working all the time, not only to keep the temperature well. That's only part of the story. It's to circulate all this air. As I exhale right now, the CO2, the CO2 around me would just form a bubble around my head if the air conditioning system wasn't working the way it is to circulate that air and get everything flowing around so we have a nice mixture of all the gases that we breathe.
Hello, Mr. Cassidy. My name is Haley. I'm in 6th grade. I was wondering what would happen if you went outside the space station without your spacesuit on.
Well, the short answer is my wife and kids and mom and dad and brother would not be too happy because I wouldn't last very long. The more technical answer is the liquids in your body would basically boil away, and it's much like, imagine if you climb, if you ever read about Mount Everest climbers, if they climb without oxygen bottles, as they climb up, the air is getting thinner and thinner and thinner. It's harder and harder to breathe. As we would be in the airlock without our spacesuit, if we ever did that, which we wouldn't, it'd be harder and harder and harder to breathe because the air is thinner and thinner and less oxygen molecules to work until you get to the vacuum of space. And there's some magic number, where you wouldn't even reach the vacuum. You'd be out before you got there, but it wouldn't be pretty.
Hello, Mr. Cassidy. My name is Sadie, and I am in 7th grade. I was wondering what it feels like to experience Earth from a different perspective.
Well, let me tell you, it's hard to describe how beautiful the Earth looks from up here. And what we see, we're not high enough. Our altitude is about 250 miles, so we can't see the whole globe in once. Imagine if you're in your mom and dad's car and the horizon kind of crossed over through the middle of the windshield of the car. That's kind of what we see, and we can see, instead of just that, we see that amount of a circle underneath us. And for instance, right now, we just passed the east coast of South America, and if I looked out the window, I could see South America off to our right-hand side as we're passing. And what does that appear? It's the blues, the really beautiful blues of the ocean, and the white clouds, and white mountaintops in some places, and really plush green vegetation, and really stark brown of the deserts. And you mix all that together, and it makes me think what a wonderful spaceship we all have and share that as our home that we call Earth. And it makes me want to take care of it and enjoy every moment that we have on the planet.
Hello, Mr. Cassidy. This is Keith. I am interested in knowing what would happen if a satellite or a space debris were about to hit the space station.
Well, Keith, that's a real threat, actually, and the way we mitigate that threat or lessen the risk for that happening is there are tracking stations around the world that can help track pieces of debris that we know the trajectory of those particles and can kind of predict to a certain level of predictability when that predicted path might intersect with the space station's predicted path. And we have really smart people that do that, project that out several days, and if it looks like it's going to be a problem, what we can do is maneuver the space station, basically increase its altitude, and change slightly our orbit so that it lessens the likelihood that that will happen. Now, the unfortunate part is there's lots of tiny little particles that are untrackable, and those it's always a risk that they would hit. And in the event that it hit the space station and penetrated a hole, that's where we train for emergencies, where we have the ability to close certain hatches and isolate that leak to just one compartment, and we'd have the remainder of the space station to be safe in. And in the worst case scenario, we climb into our Soyuz and undock from the space station and come back safely to Earth.
Hello, Mr. Cassidy. My name is Anastasia. Could you explain the difference between mass and weight in space?
Oh, good question. So, what gives you your weight on Earth is your mass, like how much mass is in your body, times the gravity that we have on Earth. So that number multiplied gives you your weight. Up here, I still have mass. I still in the same about 200-pound person that I am on the ground, but there's no number to multiply it by to give me my weight. So you multiply 0 times about 200, and you get 0. So that's how I have my weightlessness. And on the ground, when we put the gravity back into that math problem, my weight will come right back. Hopefully a little bit less, though.
Hello, Mr. Cassidy. This is Karen and Sarah. We were wondering if it's scarier leaving Earth or returning to Earth.
Wow, that's a really, really neat question to ponder. I think the short answer would be coming home, because we know we're already here, and you still got to get back. And if you think about it, all of the energy, all that fire and smoke and vibrations that goes into launch day, that pushes us up to space, all of that energy has to come back out. And how does it come back out? In the form of heat on the bottom of our spacecraft. So, and we have certain shields on the bottom that prevent that heat from melting through the metal. And once we get low enough, those heat shields fall away, and we'll come down under parachute. But it's a really dynamic part coming back into re-entry to the atmosphere. And for me, that's a part that we will be really focused on making sure we know how to safely respond to anything that goes wrong. But it shouldn't be that way.
Hello, Mr. Cassidy. My name is Rebecca. I was wondering what safety procedures are in place for medical emergencies.
Well, my last crewmate that just left last week, Tom Marshburn, he was a medical doctor. So fortunately for us, during my first 2 months on board, if there was a medical problem, then he would take care of it. He would be right there. He's an emergency medical physician. But that's not the case all the time. And what would be the situation if he was the one that was hurt? So in order to protect for that, all of us have a basic level of, I would say, emergency medicine, of the airways and breathing and circulation kind of things for an immediate response, how to deal with a choking victim and things like this. Fortunately, we have highly trained medical professionals and doctors who are on console in mission control, and if we did have a problem like that, as soon as we get the person situated and start working on them, we'd be immediately on the radio talking to those folks on the ground who, in a form of telemedicine really, would help us navigate our way through the medical problem and make sure that person got the best care that they could get right here.
Hello, Mr. Cassidy. My name is Hannah, and I'm in 7th grade, and I was wondering how often do you have to talk with your family?
Well, once a week, we have a scheduled video conference, much like Skype or FaceTime. It's not those particular programs, but the same type of thing where they can see me and I can see them, and that's usually on the weekends. We, of course, have email, and depending on where we are around the world and how the satellite coverage lines up, we do have a program on our computers where we can basically dial a phone number and it'll ring on the phone on Earth, and we can talk for a little bit. But the satellite coverage comes and goes, so that's not a full-time thing that we can use. But the communication is really good. In fact, you know, I sometimes feel like I'm more in touch with my family on the space station than when I was traveling back and forth to all the different training locations in the previous couple of years leading up to the flight.
Hello, Mr. Cassidy. My name is Connor, and I'm in 6th grade. I was wondering how much of your time during one day is spent working on experiments?
Well, that's interesting because if everything goes well with the space station, which, knock on wood, has been going well for us up here. We had one small problem with an ammonia system, but we have that fixed now. If everything goes well, we can devote a lot of time per day to science experiments. Let's take today in particular. All morning, from right after breakfast until right before lunch, I was working on this really neat experiment called spheres. And what they are little small circular satellites about the size of a soccer ball with they have a way to navigate themselves inside our volume. Right where I'm standing actually is where they were maneuvering around each other and creating a map of this environment and navigating with that map. That's what those spheres were doing. So I was part of really just setting up the experiment for the real scientists who are on the ground, who are following along and helping me troubleshoot any things that arose. That was today. So that was maybe 4.5 hours worth of science just today alone. And then this afternoon I have some exercise and some more maintenance things. So the short answer to your question is probably, in a good day, about 4 hours. And once we have multiple crew up here, that number multiplies. Yeah, so it's a really exciting place to be and to perform all this science.
Hello, Mr. Cassidy. This is Calvin, and I was wondering, why is middle school math and science important to learn in becoming an astronaut?
Well, Calvin, math and science is not just important to become an astronaut. It's an important life skill, in my opinion. From simple things like knowing how to balance a checkbook to converting money when you travel overseas. All those are small little math problems that you do every day that as you get older, you don't really think about that you're doing math, but you are. And we have complicated math problems that are happening up here on the space station, such as those debris avoidance maneuvers, the way I described how the space station has to calculate its trajectory based on some other particle's trajectory and move to a different position. That is a really hard, basically, math problem where you have to figure out the angles and the geometry of all those particles, down to simple math problems that we have up here. Like I said, converting money is a small thing on Earth, but up here we have to maybe calculate the time differences between experiments that we're conducting and things like this. So math and science are fundamental things that we use throughout our day, whether you're in space, on the ground, or somewhere in between. I can't say enough how important it is to develop a strong foundation in that discipline.
Hello, Mr. Cassidy. My name is Morgan, and I am in 7th grade. I was wondering, when you go to space, about how long does it take you to get through Earth's atmosphere and go to the space station?
Well, once we climb into the rocket, we get in the rocket about 2.5 hours before launch, but that time doesn't count towards your answer. Once the rocket lights and we lift off the pad, The rockets are burning for about 8.5 to 9 minutes. Then the engines cut off, and we are safely in orbit. We have to do a few small adjustments to be in a more stable orbit. And if we're not going to rendezvous to the space station, we would stay there, and then the next day do a few maneuvers to catch up and align ourselves with the space station. And on the third day, we would rendezvous. However, recently, we've tried a new technique, which myself and my two Russian crewmates, Pavel Vinogradov and Sasha Masurkin, had the honor and privilege of trying out for the first time a few months ago, and that was we rendezvoused to the space station 6 hours after liftoff. So we did that 8.5 minutes that I talked about, and then over the course of the next 5 hours or so, we did a series of maneuvers to catch up to the space station. Now, speaking of math, to let you appreciate how complicated all of that's going on, the scientists and engineers that calculate those maneuvers, the space station is traveling 17,500 miles an hour, or 5 miles every second. And the Soyuz, or the vehicle that we come up in, has to rendezvous with that. Imagine a quarterback on a football team throwing a ball to a receiver who is running 5 miles a second across the field, and you have to throw that pass and hit him perfectly. And that's how these engineers calculate the maneuver of our spacecraft. And so over the course of those 6 hours, we successfully caught up to the space station, going 17,500 miles, plus a little bit more to catch up.
Hello, Mr. Cassidy. My name is Shelby, and I was wondering, how is launching with the Russians different than launching with the Americans?
Well, the most noticeable thing for me was all the books that I had in front of me were written in a language that I'm not familiar with. I'm familiar with it now. I'm sort of joking because of all the training and Russian language training that I've had. But it's very comfortable in the shuttle as a native English speaker to have all the procedure books written in your native language. It's quite different in the Soyuz for me. But we do so much training, and I'm very familiar with Pavel and Sasha, that within our cockpit, we all knew the roles and things that had to happen, much like with our shuttle crew, the same sort of feeling I had, a true sense of confidence that we could accomplish any malfunction that arose, and we would do our best to solve it. The other noticeable difference is size. The Soyuz is more, I don't know if you know these cars called a Mini Cooper, but the Soyuz is more like that, just a couple of people really kind of squished in there in a few bags, whereas the shuttle is a larger, like, pickup truck kind of thing, where you get a lot of cargo and you have bigger seats. So it's two different styles, and neither one's right or wrong. It's just that it's different design on what it needs to do. So it's much more small and compact inside the Soyuz, and the shuttle is a little bit larger. But both, the ride to space on either vehicle is a tremendous experience, and one that I would like to do again and again.
Chris, it's Ben Squire again. I just want to thank you very much from all the students at Talbot for this great experience, and I owe you one when you get back.
Well, Ben, thanks so much for arranging this. What a treat it is to be with you there in Fall River, Massachusetts. And when I get back on Earth, I'll eventually be in New England, and maybe in the early spring of 2014, we can arrange an in-person visit. So thanks very much, Ben. Take care, and all of you students. Great questions.
Houston ACR. Thank you. That concludes the event.
Thank you, Talbot Innovation Middle School. Station, we're now resuming operational audio communications.
Copy, Houston.